Okay, so welcome everybody to this OPA Live. So wonderful to be here with this incredible panel and Celeste as moderator today. I'm just here today to give you a couple of announcements. I think most everyone knows that we're having this retreat in Park City, Utah in the fall, and we are still in an early bird phase of pricing. And although several tracks are sold out, Ann Orderly's sold out, Lynn Bell's sold out, Arlen's uh, peer group. There's still a couple of spaces. Well, there's a few spaces in some tracks, but some of them are getting kind of, filled up, like Rick Levine almost, and Kira coming all the way from Australia to do some medical astrology. Anyway, the thing that makes an OPA retreat different from pretty much any other experience that you can have in the professional astrology world is you choose your track leader and you spend 3 days with also time for having fun. The place we're staying at has hot tubs on the balcony and a big park, national preserve right behind the place. But every day you're working on charts and connecting and going deep. And I just think if there's any way that you can make it, it is totally worth going. And I have one space left in my consulting skills. It was filled up and somebody had to back out. And so there's one space. Consulting skills is amazing for deepening your work, your ability to do great astrology. Astronomy for astrologers, which is also part of OPA's certification process. Lene Van Horn and Jeff Grunland teach it, and that is starting up in August, and there's still spaces there. You can also just take the exam, right? We have the exam at the very end of it. It's in a couple of different times, so making allowance for different time zones. But you can either take the course and test, or you can just test out if you think you know your astronomy. And if you know your astronomy, you have my love and respect because I have such a hard time with astronomy. Um, and I just wanted to mention that coming up July 14th, we have the amazing April Elliott Kent doing electing wedding charts that work. And July 21st, Maria Blaquer, Mercury Hour presentation. Our Mercury Hour presentations are open to the public. And this is a great talk. I honestly don't even know how to pronounce the word that she's talking about, but I'm sure if you come to see her, she is a great expert on many unique traditional techniques. And so that is about it. We do appreciate you, you know. We are an organization that's here to serve professional astrologers and the public, people who are interested in astrology. And so we appreciate all of you who have taken the time to show up this morning. And I will turn things over now to Celeste.
Thank you so much, Kay. We're so excited to discuss the astrology of vocation today. And we're going to start with Faye Blake. So let me introduce you, Faye. Yeah. And I'm going to spotlight you. So let me. Okay, here we go. So Faye Blake is the founder of the Amsterdam School of Astrology. As well as being a very experienced astrologer, Faye is a therapist and business consultant. She has spoken often at major international astrology conferences and taught extensively online. Her book, Vocational Astrology, offers acclaimed expertise on career guidance and personal branding using astrology. I have a copy and I absolutely love this book. It forms the basis of her tailor-made vocational astrology apprenticeship program. Faye brings years of experience to her work in business and in working with individuals to find their true calling. She is qualified as an inner child integration therapist. She also holds an MA in cultural astronomy and astrology. Faye is passionate about sharing her knowledge. See her free blog at www.fayeblake.nl. She loves encouraging people to go for their true vocation, which takes guts. She is known for her creative ways of working and the humor she brings to serious subjects. So I'm going to turn it over to Faye. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. And after she finishes her talk, I will go through them with Faye. But you can also feel free to just have some general talk in the chat.
Okay. Okay. So you can see that okay?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, great. Oh, thanks for that lovely introduction. And I'm Celeste. I'm glad you're enjoying my book. It was written quite a while ago now, but it's still, it's still very relevant, I think, for people that are looking to find their right vocation, and especially now, because it seems to be the only thing we can really do to help the world, I think. So anyway, there's such strange things happening in the world that I think we have to do our inner work, and we have to offer our gifts to the world to try and make it a better place. But anyway, there we are. So what I want to do today is, let's see if I can get these slides going here. I want to talk a little bit about the book and the structure of the book, because it sort of informs where I'm coming from with this topic. And then I called my talk Your Genius and Branding Yourself, or getting it out there and pushing out your brand. So I want to talk about those two topics. So basically what I'm trying to do is, in 20 minutes or 25 minutes, is discuss my whole book. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I'll do my best to show you how I work. Okay, this is the book. So the book really started because there was an astrologer who was working with a career counsellor, and she wasn't a very experienced astrologer. She'd only just started, and she realized that the method that the career counsellors were using would be very useful for an astrologer to use. So she asked me to come in and put the astrology to it, and then teach it together with a career counsellor. So that's what we did, and it was really fantastic. So what I did was I stole the structure from career counsellors. If you can't beat them, join them, I always say. And then added the astrology to it. So that's the structure of my book. So the book doesn't start with a horoscope, which most people do when they're doing career stuff or vocational stuff. The book starts with a kind of structure that you end up with a vocational profile, which you can use for your whole life eventually. So it's got, in Dutch, it's a Dutch career counselling method. So it sounds a bit better in Dutch, but basically the structure is: who am I, what can I do, and what do I want? So within that there's different sections that are covered by different planets. Now the other person, you know how you have sort of fads of getting excited about different people. Lately I've been getting quite excited about Michael Meade, and he talks a lot about your genius, and I think it's the way he speaks about it is the way I look at vocation in a way. And I'll give you some quotes for him. But I use what he uses for genius, and I'll give you his definition in a moment. I use the sun and the aspects to the sun, which is the same as what Liz Green uses for looking at vocation. She looks at the sun. So here's a quote from Michael Meade, and he's a wonderful storyteller, and he uses a lot of mythology and a lot of archetypal stories. And he says the old meaning of genius refers to the spirit that is already there, the inborn spirit that enters the world with each child born. The native genius residing within us bears the innate gifts and talents we bring to the world, and it intends to give them. The soul must be limited by fate, but it arrives gifted and aimed and dedicated to fulfilling its original agreement, to contribute meaningfully to life. The primary agreement our souls have made before birth is to deliver our unique gifts to the world. However, the labor of being born and the necessity of entering the realm of time and expediency cause us to forget the divine errand that the soul has agreed to undertake. So that's really a pity, and I think people do lose, you know, they do lose the memory of that and what they've come here to do. But I do believe that we each have a special gift that we should give to the world. It's a shame if we don't, is the way I look at it. So how can the astrology help that, is what I was trying to look at. This is his book. It's well worth reading. He says, without a sense that we are aimed by fate and uniquely formed, we can fail to live the adventure our souls came to life to live. we can become pawns in the hands of whatever outside authority happens to be in our lives. Instead of finding where we best fit into the mysterious scheme of life, we try to simply fit in. And if you're practicing astrology, you'll really recognize this, I think. We simply accept the life being handed to us and live within the ideas and the expectations of others. And certainly, if you're a therapeutic sort of astrology, you'll uncover a lot of that where, you know, a parent has said, oh, well, you know, that's not an artist is not really a viable job. You need to go and do something else. So we give up a lot of our unique gifts, I think, when we're younger sometimes. So we live within a collective fate and fail to find the unique path our souls would have us walk. So that's part of his book, and I really agree with that. We should try and find out what is unique about us, and then get it out there and show us. Because what you see in a lot of astrologers' charts, websites, is that they all try and be the same, whereas we really do have different experiences, different things that we come in with, and it's good to really define those. So that's the way I look at doing vocational work. I was at it's interesting. I was at a quite interesting speech or talk lecture last night from and he's a cardiologist who's quite a renegade, and he's quite sort of a medical activist, you could call him. He's called Asim Malhotra. I don't know if you know him. But he was talking a lot about statins and COVID vaccines and things. But one of the things he said, because he was talking about how stress is one of the biggest problems, and one of the things he said was that it's better, he found as a cardiologist, it's better for people to be unemployed than to be in a job that they hate. Now, I know coming as a cardiologist, he's got choice, and I know that's difficult. But what I try and do is try and encourage people to go for at least taking a step towards what is more authentic for them. So let's look at the first, how I look for vocation in the chart. So as I said, I use the sun and the aspects, which is something that Liz Green, as I said, also does. I think it's on astro.com of Liz's. There's an article she wrote about this, so you can look that up on astro.com. So let's take an example. So as I said, I'm going to use the sun, and I'm going to use the aspects I always say that the sun is, why the sun is because it's our heart. And if we're going to be really happy, we follow our heart. We should follow our heart, I think. And also, I think the sun is where we're supposed to shine, you know, whereas the moon is, I don't use the moon for vocational work. I use it for environment and where you feel happy and where you feel at home at work. But the sun to me is the heart and your calling and what you're called to do and where you're supposed to shine. So this is Yulia Navalnaya. She's the wife of, I don't know if you probably were following the story of Alexei Navalny, who was the one that was in Russia that was ended up in the Arctic prison and died up there not very long ago, I think in February this year. So I thought I used her for a couple of reasons, because we don't have a birth time for her. So I've used 12 o'clock. I always use 12 o'clock. If I haven't got a birth time, because I figure you'll only ever be 12 hours out. But the reason, and I'm using cock houses because I use the Huber age point method, which you have to use that house system for. But really, what I say in the book is it's really about the structure that I'm providing in the book. And if you've got techniques that you think are better for finding vocation, you should use those, and the house systems that you use, and whatever system you use, so you can add and subtract. The thing I want to offer with the book is a kind of structure. So you get to a thing that the client writes about what their vocation is. So I get my clients to do lots of homework. I think we work too hard as astrologers. So, okay, if we look at her, then she's a Leo. She's got Sun, and the other reason I wanted to show her is that you can do this method that I use. You can do this even if you don't have a birth time, because the aspects and the Sun don't really change in a day. So it doesn't really matter for that. So if you're just using Sun and aspects, that will be right, whatever the birth time. So if we look at her, she's got Sun, and she's Sun in Leo. So I think I don't know if you followed her at all, but when her husband died, she was at a conference, a big conference in Germany, and she stood up and gave a speech, and she was absolutely fantastic. Everybody gave her a standing ovation. I mean, her husband had just died the day before or something, and here she is giving a speech to this huge crowd of top people in the world, really. And she was great. So I can see that Sun in Leo is now shining brightly. But she's also got, you can see looking down, she's got the Sun conjunct Saturn and the Sun conjunct Ceres. So she's got that little group together. I use Ceres as well. I'll talk a bit about how I think that works for her. And then generally I don't use Chiron and the nodes when I'm first working with people. So I would just use the Uranus, the Saturn and the Ceres. So she's also got Sun square Uranus. So I'd be just looking at those things. I'd be looking at the Sun in Leo, and if I had the house, I'd be looking at the house. So what we're looking for is and when I'm working with clients, I'm looking for what she recognizes about Leo. And I think for her, she had been living through her husband a lot. He was the star. He was the one that was famous. He was the one that was always speaking. And she was like the power behind the throne. And in fact, she's got that Sun Saturn, and Alexei called her his rock, which I think is really wonderful for a Sun Saturn. You know, your husband calls you his rock. But I think one of the things that's happened with her is she's now got a chance to step onto the stage in the spotlight. So taking responsibility, Saturn, for that Sun in Leo, and becoming probably the person she's supposed to be. So she's now in the spotlight, and she's promised to continue his work as in Russia, and it's very brave. I mean, she's a Leo, so she's a brave heart, but yeah, she's promised to do that. So
Okay,
then
there's a relevant question here. Do you
Sure.
use the Sun even in a night chart?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Do you use the Sun even in a night chart? That's the question.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Sun is your heart. So yeah, absolutely. So the Sun for me is your calling and your vocation. Yeah, does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So the way I use it, so as I said, she's got the Sun and Ceres and Saturn and the Uranus. So one of the exercises you can do, and you can do this yourself if you're struggling with knowing what you really should be doing and what your calling might be. Because for me, it's a discussion with clients. You know, I'm not reading their chart and saying, oh, you should be in the spotlight. I'm seeing what she's done, what she's coming in with if I had her in my practice. And we would work together on words that would work for her with her being a Leo. So what I do is this is an exercise I've got in the book as well, but I found it's really helpful for people because it's quite visual as well. So what I do is down the left-hand side, I put the Sun in Leo. So then I've just written words for her, but usually I would do this together with a client. So the Sun in Leo for me is in the spotlight, a leader, and those kinds of words. So I'd use her words. And then you go across and then put all the possible jobs you might have, possible careers you might have. So I've just said for her, the support of Navalny, leader of the opposition, what she's doing now, or a wife and a mother, which she also was. So then you're looking at what you're looking for is can she be a leader as a supporter of Navalny? Probably not. Can she be the spotlight? No, she wasn't. Can she be as leader of the opposition? Yes. And then we look at Saturn. So then we're looking at, I always say that the Sun is the main thing in the Sun and the house, but then you have a sort of a Saturn source over your heart, right? So she's got a Saturn flavor. So if we use Saturn words, and again, that would be a discussion with her, I might say plan, goal-oriented and ambitious. So in which job can she use that? Can she plan? Well, as a supporter, yes, she can. Can she be very ambitious? Well, up to a point, probably. I mean, she's the power behind the throne, possibly. But as a leader of the opposition, she can really do that. And as a wife and mother, of course, you have to plan and be not necessarily goal-oriented, but you have to be able to plan. But I've said no in terms of job for that one. And then for Uranus, I've said rebellious, independent, and innovative. So can she do that as a supporter? Yes, probably not so much independent, but certainly rebellious and innovative. And as a leader of the opposition, absolutely, she can do that. So you can see, and then, and for wife and mother, who knows, possibly. And then Ceres for me is, in terms of job, it's Ceres is a planet that supports the underdog. She's a mediator, you know, in the myth she says, no, I'm not going to give you any food until I have my daughter back. So she's a mediator. And I also think she has a lot to do with democracy, but that's a whole other lecture. So as a supporter of nobility, can she do those things? Yes. And as a leader, absolutely she can do that. She's supporting the underdog all the time. And I've added Claren here as the wounded healer, but that works in very different ways. So that would be up to a discussion with her as to how that works. So I think what you can see with her is that she is definitely against the government. You can see here all of the way those archetypes work, I think, but it gives a very visual idea of, with the ticks down the middle, that the leader of the opposition is, obviously it's just an example, but that would be a good job for her. Okay. So is there any questions on that? I'll just stop there just in case there's any questions on the sun part of that.
I have a question.
Sure.
What orb do you use for the aspects to the sun?
I tend to use about 10 for the sun. Certainly for conjunctions or whatever. But what I tend to do, and my guide is this kind of sort of 8 for squares and maybe 4 for sextiles or whatever. But I tend to just look at the archetype and not necessarily whether an aspect is good or bad. But I also tend to see if people recognize them. Right, so if I'm talking about Sun Saturn and they're going, no, I don't recognize that, or no, I'm a terrible planner, or oh no, then I will think, well, if it's like on the border of 8, 9, 10, then I won't go on about it. I'll do the ones that the client recognizes more. But I've got the orbs that I use in the book as well. There's a chart in the book of those, and I think they're online somewhere as well. But I'm really not an orbist, so I'm a bit flexible because of the way I talk with people and the way I ask a lot of questions. I think we don't ask enough questions. Yeah, any other questions on the sun?
Yes, Helen is asking, could you explain how you narrow down what to put in the columns?
Well, it's just the aspects with the sun, right? If you're talking about the ones down the left-hand side, then you've got for Julia, you've got the sun. If we go back one, we've got the sun in Leo. That's one thing. So then we've got the descriptions of what she might use for that. Saturn, she's got an aspect with Saturn. Uranus, she's got the aspect with Uranus, and Ceres, she's got the aspect. And going across, I mean, if somebody hasn't got a job, then you can just highlight words for each of those, because what you can do once you've done this is you can use these words in your resume or on your website, on the About Me of your website. So I think in the article I wrote, I've given an example of a text that I might have used for her. So you might say something like, Julia is an independent, she can work independently. She's a very goal-oriented, ambitious leader, and she loves being in the spotlight, right? So you can use those words. Now, going across the top, though, how I tend to do that is I used to put in the first column, I usually put get them to put what they're doing now. So they might say, well, I'm an administrator in a government department or something, but what I really want to be is something else, right? So like an example I had was somebody who wanted to be a funeral director and she was an administrator. So then I would put, the wanted jobs across the top. And of course, once you've done that, you can use this for your whole life. When you get a new job, you can think, does this fit? Does it tick all my boxes, literally and figuratively? Am I being able to use all these energies in this job? That's the idea of that. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So the other one, the next part of this is the sun. Obviously, that sun and the vocation thing is part of the Who Am I in my book. This next part, I just wanted to give you an example of one of the subsets of what can I do, which I use Venus for, which is about talents. And this is, people love talking about this one. So And the idea about doing it this way is that people come more than once. They love coming more than once. So I might do a whole session just on the sun. I might do a whole session just on talents. And then the client will go away and write up what they think they're good at. And it's quite challenging for people to do that because most of them think they're not very good at anything. So, but anyway, yeah, this is what I use to start a discussion on talents. I use Venus, because obviously it's what we own and what we have in house and what we love doing, you know, what we value and what we really like to do. So if we do enough of it, and a lot of people don't do enough of their Venus, I think, but if we do, then we get good at it, right? So she's also got Venus and Leo in this case. So Venus and Leo is obviously, you know, she has a talent for being on stage, for standing in the spotlight, and that really showed at the meeting she was in Munich, wherever it was in Germany. She also has, I've just put in the aspects that are relevant. It's the same chart. She has an aspect with Venus Mercury, so that would be a talent for communication or writing. So, you know, she's good at languages as well. Her English is pretty good. So, you know, when she can speak in other languages, and she has a talent for communicating with people. She has that Venus Saturn as well, which is a talent, you know, as I said, she was a rock for Alexei. But she also has a talent probably for solid structures, you know, for planning and solidity and being kind of really grounded, I would imagine, with that Leo. So it's an interesting, you could spend a while talking with her about that and saying what your talent and describing what your talents are. Then she has one with Mercury. She has the Mercury Pluto, which I'd also add in there really, because it's obviously that's conjunct. So it's, she's got the Venus Pluto and the Mercury Pluto together, which is like this is somebody who's going to speak the truth to power in a way, isn't it? It's a talent for being really like I'm not taking any bullshit in a way, and she does that. She's not afraid. She's quite bold, I think, the way she speaks. And with the Neptune, she's also got Neptune there. She's probably quite creative in how she does that. So she has a talent for being intuitive and for picking up the vibe in a room or in a group or something like that. That's a Mercury, Venus, Neptune is sometimes that skill. I think the Saturn also showed her skill with Saturn also showed when she just wouldn't stop when Alexei was poisoned. I don't know if you remember that, and it was down to her that she got him out of Russia and into Germany for treatment. Otherwise, he would have died. So she was really solidly there to have a plan and to not give up and just to go for it. So she wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I think that gives you some idea of you know how you can start looking at your talents. And it doesn't matter the aspect. That's just you know, some people can't use them because they've had traumas or whatever. That's a more later on in the process, a therapeutic process. But it's a way of looking at what's possible, and if it's working negatively, then I try and help people use the aspect more positively. You know, so for example, that Mercury, Venus, Pluto could be a sister that was very bossy, and she doesn't dare to come out and say what she thinks. So that's a therapeutic process. But the possibility of her doing that is there if she does the inner work. So that's the way I look at that. Okay, so is there any questions on Venus? I'll just stop there for a sec before I go on to the last part.
No, there is no questions. Okay.
Right. The other thing that's in the book as well, I talk about personal branding, which I hate the term, but branding is really important because it helps you, if you can brand yourself somehow, it helps you define your website and the important points that you have on a resume or something like that. So I'll show you a brand in a company that I really like. It's one of my favorite companies. In fact, I'm writing a book on business astrology at the moment, and I've got permission to use them as an example of this, because it's one of my favorite websites, not to mention one of my favorite products. You know, it's a different story. So this is Hendrix Gin. And what I've said with this is time to be you. So this is about what's unique about you and what's special about that you, and how do you find that in the horoscope. So I only use 3 points for this, and the ascendant, the MC, and the sun. Now the sun is obviously going to be important because it's your heart and your vocation and what you really love to do and where you're going to shine. So the sun is part of it. the ascendant is part of it because it's how you come across to other people. So it says something about your image, I think, and how you come across. And the MC, of course, is your reputation or your mission. You know, what you want to do in the world, your legacy, what you want to leave behind once you've gone. So it's definitely about reputation. So those and it sounds too simple, just using those 3 points and the keywords to put them together. But try it sometime. It really works. It works better if you're with a glass of gin, and you've got people who know the archetypes, and then you can toss around ideas, and you come up with a really good slogan for yourself often. So I'll just show you the one for Hendrix Gin, because I'll show you their website first. They change it all the time, but this is what it looks like, and you can start thinking about what archetypes you might be seeing in those 3 places. So we've got a gin made oddly, we've got the unusual times, we've got botanical quest, we've got the Society of the Unusual. It's totally nuts, this website. But here's their 3 points, right? So this is their registered date, and they're a Virgo. You can see the sun's in Virgo, and you've got the MC as Aquarius and the Gemini MC. So I think you can already see the Aquarius, I think, in the website. It's a bit unusual and a bit crazy. The Gemini I'll come on to in a minute, but the other thing you can see if you look at some of this is in this website there's loads and loads of detail, and what they talk about a lot is herbs, medicinal herbs, and they've been out trekking into the Amazon to find special herbs for their gin and all this sort of thing, and they've got a thing about cucumbers, and they do all these. It's a really fun site. But you can see there's lots of detail in it, and I think with the herbs and the detail in the site, you can really feel the Virgo energy in the site. And the other thing you can see is that if you read this, there's a lot of twos going on, which is the Gemini, and it's a very funny, witty kind of website. You can feel the Gemini in the text. So they're saying they created this elixir with 2 entirely different and very antique stills. So you've got 2 stills. And then they had these 2 people. There's this wonderful woman who's their sort of creator of all their gins, and the other guy who uses the still. So they work together. So there's a lot of twos going on, but I think you can feel the Gemini energy in it. So all you're using is those 3 points, but you can get the kind of essence of something in those 3 points, I think. And it comes across. So the idea of doing this is that it's absolutely authentic. You know, if you look at some of the websites, then they're really authentic if you do this. Okay. So there are questions about that? Any of that? If there's a planet on the MC or the IC, sorry, the MC or the ascendant, then I tend to use 4 keywords rather than 3. And sometimes you only have 2 because you might have, the sun and the MC might be the same, or the sun and the ascendant might be the same. But it's about getting keywords together that make a kind of a slogan. Okay, so any questions? And I'll just show you, then I'll show you our website.
There are no questions.
Okay, so this is the website of an astrologer, right? This is Mark Jones, who you probably all know. And he's got those 3 points as he's Pisces, but he's got Sagittarius and Scorpio in the other 2 points. And I think you can see this is his homepage, right? So immediately if you look at his homepage, you know exactly who he is and what he does, right? So you can see the colors are kind of a little bit scorpionic, but not really dark. So you can see this kind of mixture of that softness of this Pisces and the blue purple of the Scorpio Pisces. So the color, you can use this for colors as well for your website. You can see the kind of healing in the Pisces thing, and your soul's deepest desire. You can kind of hear in Pisces, I think, as well. Your highest potential, and I think the hills in the background, you've got quite a wide view, is the Sagittarius in there. And of course, the Scorpio is the transformation and your deepest desire. So you can see that's he didn't use this to make this website, but you can see it does fit him really well. So sometimes what I do is I give people feedback on their websites. So yeah, in his case, I'd say no, good, perfect. It matches completely those 3 points. And I think you can see that it sums up what he does. If you know Mark, you know that you can see exactly what he does. So that's how you can match those 3 points with your slogan on your website.
There is a question, what are the 3 points? Can you just review that
The
again?
ascendant, right? The ascendant, the MC, and the sun. So we can just do a quick one if you like. Should we just do yours, Celeste? Maybe just what are yours, and I can just put a slogan for you together just to give you an example.
Oh, I'd love that. Yes, I'm a Taurus sun, an Aries moon, and a Cancer rising.
Taurus, Aries, and Cancer. Okay, so some of the words I'd use for Taurus are practical, Aries is a kind of a kickstart or a go for it, come on, or about you. And Cancer is so the combination would be something like I create a safe space, Cancer, create a safe space to kickstart you and give you practical advice or something like that. So, yeah, I mean,
That's what I do.
Exactly. I rest my case.
Yes, and I think the question here, which I had too, is like what the midheaven. So the sun, the midheaven, and the ascendant.
Yeah.
So what's midheaven, Celeste?
Aries.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. You just mix and match, right? So you've got it doesn't matter which is which. I mean, it does obviously in your chart. But if you take any of the 3 points and just mix and match keywords, you can see how that works for you, Celeste, can't you?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
so
gave you my moon instead of my midheaven, but yeah, it's Aries.
what's your midheaven then?
It's still Aries.
Okay.
My moon is in my 10th house.
Because the moon's more what you keep for you as well. But the midheaven is you want to be out there and being active, So with that midheaven, you want to have a reputation of going for it. So I often use the word kickstart for Aries, or or safe space for Cancer, or you can use your own words and put them together. But like I said, it goes better with a glass of wine. So when you're doing these. So it's good fun. I think I'm just about through my time, aren't I? So
yes, thank you. This was excellent. Oh, wait, yes, everyone will get the recording. There was a question about the recording.
Okay, so I'll just put up if you want to contact me as well. So that fayeblake.nl is my website, and that's the one with the free blog that you mentioned at the beginning. The SS Astrology one is the one. It's got some free stuff on there. It's one for astrologers. It's got how to order some recordings, but it's also got like free articles and things like that on it. And then my juxtaposition one is the one for companies. And my book also has its own website, so there's lots of reviews on the book and the structure of the book on that last one. So yeah, so I don't know if we've got time for any questions, but that's me.
Thank you so much. This was excellent. Yeah, we so enjoyed you sharing your wisdom. And I don't think there are any other questions. Okay, so Bronwyn.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Bronwyn. Let me
Hi.
spotlight you. Okay, and I'll share your bio. So Bronwyn Simons is a predictive astrologer and astrology mentor with a worldwide client base and a busy consulting practice. She is beloved by clients and students for having a warm, wise, compassionate, and positive style of sharing. And I concur as a client and a student of Bronwyn's. She's an earthy Taurus with a highly intuitive Cancer moon and a Scorpio and a Scorpio chart signature. Her astrological approach is rooted in the elegant functionality of traditional astrology, informed by her background in art, history, literature, depth psychology, and classics, and guided by modern astrological principles of client care and astrology as a tool for personal growth. Her style is practical and embodied, with deep roots in the mystery of the otherworld. After 30 plus years of study and practice, she is truly a master of the esoteric arts. Her website is www.bronwynsimons.com.
Thanks, Celeste. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too. And everyone, please put your questions in the question mark.
Well, I'm really, really happy to be here. Very thankful to OPA for opening up this possibility, and just really honored to be part of this really astute panel. My goodness, I really enjoyed Faye. I'm going to be playing with that midheaven ascendant sun combo for reworking my website this year. So that's exciting. I'm going to be talking to you guys today about success cycles. This is actually a course that I teach for everyone from professional astrologers to non-astrological entrepreneurs. My perspective on us as professional astrologers in today's society is that we need to be really daring business builders, because there isn't really a slot in our culture for us as there may have been at other times in history. So part of being a professional astrologer is being really strong in your business growth skills. And because it's such an unusual profession, we can't always use those traditional business methods. We want to be able to use our own esoteric methods as well. So that's really what this is all about. I'm going to go ahead and start to share my screen. Celeste, I think I can do that, right?
You should be able to. We can see it.
Okay, fantastic. So success cycles, astrology for career and business success. Well, we've already learned a little bit about me. But I think it's important also for you guys to know that I have used these simple techniques to grow my own business over the last 7 years. I'm just finishing up the first Saturn cycle of this iteration of my astrology business, and was able to grow my business to 6 figures within the first 3 years. So I'm very proud of that. I am a serial entrepreneur, so I've been working for myself since I was in my 20s, but working professionally as an astrologer for the last 7 years. So I actually use these techniques. I've used them to grow my own business. And I use astrological planning literally every day in my life and business. You can see the practical Taurus, right? I want this to be really usable for you. So in the 20 minutes, half an hour that we have together, I'm going to introduce you to this idea of cyclical time in the creative cycle, or probably not introduce you to it, but give you my perspective on it. And I'm going to give you just a brief survey of these 4 major planning tools that I have used in my own business growth. And we're following the moon, the sun, Jupiter, and Saturn for our monthly creative cycles, our annual planning, our cycles of expansion over time, and our cycles of long-term growth and legacy. Each of these tools obviously can be studied in depth, but today I'm going to give you, like I said, a survey. So my hopes and goals for you by the end of this presentation is that you begin or continue to embrace this mindset shift into cyclical time, which I think is part of the mystery that we're introduced to as we go deeper into our astrological studies. So my hope would be for you to embrace cyclical time, for you to begin to consider, if you haven't before, your business as an initiatory journey. What if your business growth and personal growth were reflections of each other? And what if in growing your business, you are also, especially as a person in an esoteric business, what if you were also on an initiatory journey of change? I would like you to take a new perspective on some really foundational astro wisdom. I'm not going to be sharing anything with you that you don't already know, probably, but I'm going to be sharing a different perspective on it. So I invite you to enter into beginner's mind for this presentation. And I would love it if you would choose one of the 4 tools that I'm offering you and begin to implement it today in your business. For each of the 4 tools, I'll give you a little quick start guide. So, as soon as we get off the call this morning, you can do that work and start to apply these planning methods in your own life and business. So that's where we're going. So give a little thought, if you will, to this idea of natural cycles. The planetary cycles are, of course, natural cycles. And can you think of some other cycles that you would consider to be natural cycles? What are the ones that come to mind? When you think about a natural cycle, what do you think of? If you want to drop into the chat with what you see as some of the most important natural cycles in your life, what do those look like? What are those? And Celeste, if you want to read some of those out, I'd love to hear what people are seeing. Here's what I think of. I think of primarily, one of the things that I think of, and here's the Taurus again, is the vegetative cycle, right? This seasonal cycle, yes, but also the birth, life, and death and regeneration of the plant cycle, something that's been such a model for our mythic thinking and our symbolic thinking throughout human history. I think of the menstrual cycle and the longer term female life cycle from menarche to menopause. I think, of course, of the planetary orbits, of the ocean tides, of the fertility cycle of ourselves and of animals. I think of the seasons. And we can bring it home to our own bodies because we're always living in these embedded cycles. It's the beauty of astrology, too, is it puts us in this great mirror of embedded cycles, but we can feel them in our own body with our in-breath and out-breath, our response to day and night with the sleep, waking, and dream cycle, our long-term life and death cycle, what we witness emotionally. So we are embedded in natural cycles. And yet, when we start talking about career and business growth, this is the model that comes into all of our heads. This is the model that our culture gives us. This upward trajectory, linear, not cyclical, going in one direction. It might take a little dip, but it keeps going upwards. It's an upward evolutionary trajectory that really doesn't stop. So through our culture, we learn that creativity, accomplishment, personal growth, and business growth should always look like this, right? Following this upward trajectory. There's no rest point, there's no cycling back. And we can feel like we're failing if our growth doesn't look like this. But what do all those natural cycles that we just looked at, what do all of our planetary cycles actually look like? They look like this. That's what nature shows us. It's what the planets show us. It's what our own bodies show us, our emotional lives. Growth cycles are actually circular and continuous. They begin, they grow, they peak, they release, they die away. And the dying away, which is the part our culture doesn't like to look at, the dying away prepares the ground for the new beginning. So, of course, in humanistic astrology, probably starting with Dana Rudger, we started thinking about these cycles this way. How do we measure this cyclical growth? How do we apply it to personal growth? We can start to track the phases of natural cyclical growth by quartering the circle. Of course, this goes way back beyond the early 20th century. This goes back into the depths of mythology and human symbolism. We have this squaring the circle. And this is, of course, the iconic symbol for us as astrologers. So what if we apply this symbol to this idea of tracking cyclical growth? And you know, it's a circle, so we can begin anywhere. But if we begin here at the bottom, think about a conception point. Is this starting to look familiar yet? The next point we reach might be a choice point, a growth and choice point, then a culmination and fruition, and a release and choice point. Now, of course, it's the lunar cycle. But can you think of non-astrological examples? Can you start to extend outwards and use your knowledge of the lunar cycle to apply these ideas to other kinds of natural cycles and other kinds of cycles of growth in your life. This is the model we're going to use for all the cycles that we'll look at. Conception, choice point, culmination, release. Ordering that circle. So now if we start to think about our personal growth mind, our business mind, what are we actually doing during each of these phases? So yes, we're using the lunar phases as a model, but really only because it's a convenient model, not because it begins with lunar phases. Lunar phases are but one reflection of this, I think almost universal way of working with cyclical growth. So at the conception point, we vision, plan, and begin. Then we actively implement and build. Then we actively release, and we rest and review. Well, this is a fantastic recipe for business building along almost any timeline you can think of, whether it's your business day, your week, your month, your year, or the whole lifetime over decades of your business. We go through these cycles in our work anyway. But if we have models, if we have a reflection, if we have the wind in our sails from working with the sun, the moon, and the planets, how much better can we grow through these cycles? And which piece do you think is the piece that always gets left out? It's the rest and review. And if you only have one takeaway from what I'm offering you today, it's to emphasize the importance of that balsamic phase in whatever it is we're doing in our lives. It's the phase that gets neglected again in our own culture. We love to do this part, right? This is what we are all about in business building, in the entrepreneurial world. We're all about the vision. We're all about the active implementation, keeping busy, constant growth, constant innovation. Even the active release part, we like that okay. And by release, I don't just mean letting something go, like composting it, but release, like putting your creative output into the world. Like what I'm doing today with this work is an active release, bringing it out so that others can benefit from it. We like to cycle through these parts, and we don't like to spend equal time here. Can you think of other examples, and feel free to drop into the chat, other examples outside of astrology where we see these 4 phases?
Well, for business, like product launches, this is part of the cycle that corporations use.
Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
And it really is. And I think probably even in a corporate setting, that rest and review period gets overlooked. My daughter works in corporate, and they are just in such a cycle of release, 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 launch, launch, launch. And, there are always issues of burnout and being unprepared for things because not enough time, sometimes they'll give lip service to this part of the cycle. But true rest and review actually enhances productivity. Wouldn't it be beautiful to be able to bring this kind of lunar wisdom into a corporate setting? I know, Celeste, you've worked in both a corporate setting and now as an entrepreneur astrologer, so I'm sure you can imagine all of the ways this could be applied.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's another question here. Can I ask it now?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Trudy's asking, for the lunar phase, do you look at personal moon transits over the universal new moon, full moon?
That's a really good question. And this is where the layering can get very sophisticated. I would start, especially when you're just beginning with this, to work with the moon in the sky and establish a strong lunar tracking practice. Then I would work with the longer lunar gestational cycles. And then I would go in and start to work with your own lunar return and map that onto your monthly and 2.5-year cyclical growth. So the beauty of the moon is it can expand outwards into all of those timeframes and can be used in a really simple way by non-astrologers, but it can be used in a really in-depth way if you have that knowledge. So yes, yes to both. And what I really want to emphasize here is that lunar cycle as a model, not only as the lunar cycle itself, but as a model, not only for that creative growth cycle that we've seen, but also for the way that we work with all planetary cycles as growth cycles along those 4 quarters. So that's where we are. Planetary cycles provide a way to track our cyclical growth process along different timelines. So the lunar cycle, of course, is our 1 month, but also 2.5 years, also 30 years if you're tracking the progressed lunar cycle, and helps us to understand on the simplest level our monthly action and rest cycles, and provides a model for those other phase cycles. The solar cycle, of course, 1 solar year. If we're applying this to our business planning, it helps us to understand our personal annual action and rest cycles, kind of gives depth and meaning to our quarterly business planning. And Trudy, this one, yes, does refer to your personal solar cycle and the way it syncopates with the solar year and the seasons. So the Jupiter cycle is actually what I wrote the OPA article on. So for those of you who want to go more in depth with this, you can do that in the upcoming issue of OPA magazine. The Jupiter cycle being 12 years. And of course, the Jupiter cycle has a lot to say about a lot of things in our lives. For our purposes, we're looking at the Jupiter through the houses. So Jupiter to the ascendant, and helping us plan for long-term business expansion and how we budget resources over long periods of time. This one here has been the most helpful to me as I've grown my business over time, especially with the launch and knowing what would be available to me at the beginning of my business. And finally, of course, the Saturn cycle of 30 years helps us prepare for long-term challenges and grow our legacy. So next up, I'm going to give you, like I said, an overview of how each of these tools can function in your business life. So the lunar cycle, of course, 1 month, helps us to understand those monthly rest cycles. And we are all familiar by now with beautiful Mother Moon, how she nurtures us over 29 days through those 4 major phases: new, first quarter, full, and last quarter. And we can see how we can begin to apply that to our lunar business month. And again, how you apply this, I leave that up to you. It will work for somebody who's not initiated into the ins and outs of their personal lunar cycle. This absolutely will work just following the moon in the sky. You can also apply it to your own lunar phase return or your lunar return. So work with it within your own practice in the way that works best for you. But what I'm encouraging you to do is actually start to work with it. So many of us as astrologers neglect these tools that are immediately available to us as astrologers and don't necessarily work our business through astrology. And this is the simplest one to start with. So again, we have the work of each phase: vision, plan, and begin with the new moon. You all know this. Actively implement and build through the first quarter and make choices. Actively release after the fruition of the full moon, and rest and review in that last lunar week. Now, I take this very literally in my own business, and I actually take the balsamic week, the week before the new moon, off from any type of meeting. I don't meet with clients. I don't meet with students. I don't teach. As much as possible, I leave that quiet time where I can, it's not like I'm not working. I'm catching up on admin. I'm doing creative work. I'm batching content. I was afraid to implement that. It seemed like a really huge leap. And once I implemented that one simple solar or lunar tool in my business, I can't tell you the difference it made in my energy and my creativity. So don't overthink this. You can start using this on the simplest level, but having the courage to actually implement it, I think, is where we start. So thinking about carrying these ideas of the phases over into the next two cycles that we're going to look at. That idea of the new quarter. So that's where I've been, for instance, in my Saturn quarter for 7 years now, planning, launching, setting goals, and innovating. It might be for a week with the moon. It might be for 7 years with Saturn. It might be, for a year with Jupiter or with the sun. But these are the important work of those 4 phases: planning, launching, setting goals, and innovating. After that first quarter, simplifying, editing, strategizing, and leaning into the growth that's there. After the full, celebrating wins, releasing finished products, assessing results of growth. That's a really important piece too, is that assessment after fruition. And then that last quarter of completions is a good time to review budgets of time and energy, to make cuts, to debrief and rest. So you can apply this to a monthly cycle, or again, to any of these time frames. So you want to get started quickly with the lunar cycle. Again, don't overthink it. Work with the moon in the sky. Do your tracking, however it is that you do your tracking. Maybe take a few minutes each week for that phase-related business activity. Maybe do something bold and daring like I did and start taking balsamic weeks off. I think it's something all of us should do. But take some action, and I encourage you to take some action today on that. So the solar year, 1 year cycle. So what if we...
There are a few moon questions. Do you want me to ask you them first?
Sure, let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joy asked, what is your natal lunar phase? Would you share?
What is mine personally, or how to calculate that?
What is yours personally?
Oh, it's new. It's new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just about to turn crescent. Does that seem to make sense with who I am?
That you have a new moon? Yes.
Yeah.
You're an innovator. Yes.
Yeah.
Creating your own methods. And
So,
Marlene asked, do we apply the cycles to our natal chart or the chart of our business?
I'm coming from the perspective of applying this to your natal chart, because I'm working with this assumption that you guys are professional astrologers and that you're building a very soul-centered personal business. You can absolutely use these techniques for either a business chart or your personal chart. Yeah. I'm coming from the perspective that I'm probably talking to people with one person or at least very small businesses that are based in the esoteric arts. And those businesses are very much tied in with who you are. So that's really up to you to decide which feels most resonant for you. I do feel very much that I embody my business, so it works for me to do this through my natal chart, but it will work just as well if you have the inception chart of your business. It would be interesting actually to compare those and toggle back and forth between. This is for the lunar cycle and for the solar cycle. You'll see with the Jupiter cycle, it applies to the life of the business. So the solar year, are there more questions about the moon?
No, that's all the questions about the moon.
So I'm thinking now, in the interest of time, I'm going to leave off the Saturn section because I know people will have questions about Jupiter, and I really want to be able to spend at least 5 minutes there. Does that sound good?
Whatever works for you, Bronwyn.
Okay.
There is a request for your slides, so
I think we can be able to do that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys can do it on your end. So,
okay, yes, I'll get them from you.
Okay, great. Okay, are you guys ready to move on to the sun? It's actually worth spending a little extra time with the moon because that, again, is the model for all of these cycles. So the solar cycle, obviously our beautiful solar year, 1 year to transit the entire zodiac. so we all share in that personal energy that we all share in that energy of the seasons. That's our consensus reality, especially here in the Northern Hemisphere. But you have a personal solar energy cycle each year based on your birthday. The solar return is like a refueling station. It's like coming into that energetic pit stop. So your birthday you can think of as a personal energy reset, a personal new year. I think it actually would be very interesting to pull the chart for your business and compare the energy highs and lows of the business based on the solar year with your own. But I'm focusing here on your own personal birthday, because your vital energy has so much to say as a solopreneur of how you are in your business. So you'll face personal quarterly shifts every 3 months starting at your birthday in either the fixed cardinal or mutable season, depending on when you were born. So can you think now, are there certain times of year when you experience really high energy or really low energy, or when you cycle through a period, it seems like there's always a period of change for you in August or whenever it is? Are there busy periods with lots of activity and choices? And have you ever mapped that on to this simple cycle of your own personal solar year? So if we begin thinking your solar year begins on your birthday, and it has 4 seasons, and you can use these for your personal orderly planning. Now, I think it's maybe not a coincidence that the Capricorns of the world, who are known to be so good at business, are the ones whose personal maps are going to map most closely with our consensus map, right? With their birthday coming around the new year. So you'll be tracking with those regular business cycles. I think that's so fitting for the Capricorns. For the rest of us, we're going to be, to some degree, syncopated with the consensus reality and with the consensus business calendar. So I really want you to think about using this as a model for, again, budgeting your energy over time, because not all of us are built in such a way that, oh, we're just so ready to do mental work around tax season, or we're so ready to launch a new product in those months of March and October when are supposed to be the best months to do that. Instead, I want you to think about this simple view of the solar cycle as a way of touching base with what vital energies are available to you throughout the year, and how you can amplify your self-care and your business care to match that availability of energy. So around your birthday, you get that resurgence of energy. You enter into a new profession. You're feeling renewed. And for that first 3 months, you'll be in that vision, plan, and begin phase of building up your energy. Then with that first quarter, so for instance, I was born on May 14th, I'm a Taurus. So I can think about hitting those fixed seasons. I hit that first quarter at Leo season. That is a time when I tend to have a little downturn in energy and making a lot of choices. So notice that first quarter, and if that tracks for you, and think about moving from that into your second quarter of your year, really leaning into active growth, because you'll have lots of mature solar energy available to you for that second quarter. Think about the possibility of releasing things into the world after your opposite birthday. So for me, that would be between Scorpio season and Aquarius, that period of active release. And then thinking about how much can you invest in rest in those months leading up to your birthday. That's your time for your end of year review, personal review for your own energetic output, review for your business, thinking about what needs to change. So you're ready for the turnover, the energetic turnover of your solar return. So again, we're using the same model: vision, plan, begin, active implementation and building, active release, rest, and review. This time, instead of a week, we're dealing with those 3-month quarters. And you will find that the work for you is getting this syncopated with the consensus reality. But so much easier to do that when you're aware of your own energetic cycle and the ways that you can nurture yourself and prepare yourself for those times of lower energy even if there are times when there are more demands on you from the outer world. So you can use those for your personal quarterly planning. Again, I would like you to not just learn this, but get started on it. Calculate your solar quarters. If you already have astrology brain, it's easy to do this. If you're born in the fixed seasons, it's the fixed seasons, etc. Put those on your calendar. Put them in there in 4 different colors of highlighter. And at each solar choice point, so those quarters from your birthday, review your personal energy budget, review your business, and see what needs to shift as far as self-care and as far as energy budgets for your business. Make any adjustments that you need to on those quarters. Okay, we are going to finish up with the Jupiter cycle. This one is so rich, and I know you guys are going to have lots of questions about this. And again, I'm going to refer you back to the article in the upcoming OPA magazine that is going to take you in depth through this technique. Now, this technique is an expansion and sort of a personalization of the work in this amazing book that you all should have if you don't have it already, Dynamic Astrology by John Townley, which is cyclical planning for business growth. I've taken Townley's work and given it my Cancerian personal solopreneur slant. And what you see as a result of that is that my collaboration with his ideas. So Jupiter helps us to plan for a long-term expansion and budget our resources over a longer period of time. 12 years to be exact, and year by year. So we know Jupiter, he's the guy that expands whatever he touches as he moves through each house of our chart. And let me be clear, this is Jupiter through the houses, not Jupiter to natal Jupiter. This is Jupiter through the houses. As he moves through each house of our chart, he expands that area of life, bringing an infusion of resources and opportunities meant to last us for 12 years, right? By tracking Jupiter, we can anticipate when our life and business will receive particular resources. I can't tell you how brilliant this has been for my business growth. We know where to concentrate our energy each and every year. So when Jupiter's moving through our first house, second and third, first quadrant, we are expanding personal resources in our business. When he's moving through the 4th, 5th, and 6th houses of our natal chart, we're expanding the foundations of our business. When he moves through 7, 8, and 9, we get to expand those relational resources in our business. And when he moves through 10, 11, and 12, those are the challenging years when we expand social and transpersonal resources and the cycle resets. This doesn't mean you have to begin your business in a Jupiter 1 year, but it does give you such great information for whichever year you're in when you begin your business. For instance, I began my most recent business while Jupiter was in my 7th house in Sagittarius. And indeed, I built the foundations of my business that first year on relationships, on my client relationships, on relationships within our astrological community. And that's what really gave me the foundation of my business. So don't be put off and think, oh, I have to start my business in a 1 year. You don't, but it's so important to have the awareness of what are going to be the foundational resources for you as you launch that business. It may not be what you expect. It may not be the financial resources. It may be the relational resources or the community resources or even the spiritual resources, right? You guys know your houses. All we have to do is take those meanings of the houses and just slant them a little bit towards our business brain. And we have an idea of what resources will be coming into our business during that year. Drop into the chat and say what your Gemini house is, because that's the house that Jupiter is in this year. And those are the resources he's going to expand for you. So the idea is, this is the greatest access you'll have to these resources for 12 years. So you really want to lean into those, make the best use of those, And if every year you're leaning into that abundance that Jupiter brings in his different forms, you have built over 12 years something that's incredibly solid, because you have this incredible cheat sheet for knowing which resources to keep your eyes open for, which resources are going to pay off the most because of that year that you're in. Is it around your identity? Like Faye was sharing with us, the all important personal branding. Are you receiving lots of resources around that, your identity? Are you receiving that? Everybody loves a Jupiter second house year. Is it the influx of money, or is it the establishing of those channels of revenue that we do in the second house? Third house, you have all the ideas in the world and you're really focusing on your marketing. Fourth house is about your personal security. Maybe you have a capital investment to make in real estate for your business. Fifth house, those are such fun years, right? The creativity and innovation in our work, our pleasure in our work. We may focus in the sixth house on staff and daily structures. Again, your houses. Partnerships and collaborations can become the gold in our seventh house here. Eighth house is time to pay attention. We might go into debt in an eighth house year because we need to grow our business, or we might pay off a debt. Definitely time to take care of our taxes, right? Make sure we're all good. Ninth house years are fun. You might get to travel for your business or have international influences. You might really innovate. Beautiful time for the astrological community too. 10th house years can be tough because it's our business reputation on the line. And yet we have resources coming in to stoke that reputation. 11th house is fun. It's our goodwill and leadership and the community coming in to support us. Really beautiful years. 12th house years, we all know, are tough. These are the times when we can feel like I'm failing. Outer resources diminish. And that's the important thing to know in the 12th house year. You're leaning into personal resources. If your outer resources diminish, hang in there. You're about to get a new infusion. I just survived a 12th house year in my business last year. Yes, my revenue went down. Yes, my mental health suffered. I knew it was a 12th house year, so I knew to hang in. And it's already turning around now that Jupiter's in Gemini. So super rapid fire tour through the houses. Again, I go in depth in all of this in my article. Those are the years. So you can, when you get the slides, you can think about your own business growth. And here's your Jupiter Quick Start Guide. Know your ascendant. We're going to use whole sign houses. Look up your Jupiter year and quarter based on your rising sign. What long-term business activities should you be focusing on now? And of course, it's always good to look back 12 years for more information about exactly how it lands in your chart. I know you guys are going to have questions. We maybe have time for one or two questions.
Yes.
I think we should move forward because
Okay.
we need to have time for Aubrie. So
Great.
maybe questions, if there's questions for Bronwyn, we can save them to the very end when we're questioning everybody.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you so much. This was fascinating.
Yeah, this was absolutely wonderful, Bronwyn. And
you.
I am going to move the spotlight. To Aubrie. Let's see. Okay. Nope. Apologies. Let me. Okay. Thank you so much, Bronwyn, for sharing your wisdom. And Aubrie DeClerk is a career coach and astrologer who helps people open doors to fulfilling work. As a career coach, Aubrie has over 15 years of experience in corporate, nonprofit, and education environments. She has been a student of astrology for 20 plus years and has been supporting clients with career-focused astrology sessions since 2011. Aubrie is known for being highly inspirational, deeply practical, meeting clients with a spirit of open-mindedness, warmth, and possibility. Her website is www.coachingforclarity.net. And I'm so excited to hear you share your wisdom.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to get this share going.
Aubrie needs to be spotlighted, please.
All right. So I am excited to talk about 2 points in the sky today from a real practical standpoint and from my relationship with clients and working with them to help them have work that works for them. So my thought is that most of this is hopefully going to be good, useful information for you when you're working with folks, but also maybe if you have some questions or thoughts about your own work and your own relationships to these points in the sky. My intention, depending on how much time we have, is to have some more interactive pieces to what we're doing. So we'll take it a step at a time and see how it goes. Alrighty. So, oops. All right. So the first thing I want to say is none of us ever do any of this work in a vacuum at all. I mean, in terms of studying astrology, I've had a lot of people that have had a lot of amazing influences that I admire very much. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank the people that have been a part of my journey, that have been a part of my learning, that have influenced my thinking. And none of the things that I'm going to be saying in their entirety are original. But again, it's like Bronwyn was saying, like putting our own lens about it and who we are as people in our work is really important. So I wanted to just take a moment to have a slide where I say thank you to these folks. Especially when we get to the Chiron part, family can be really tender and important. So if there's things that you think about when you think about interpreting or understanding yourself in this way in relationship to work, some gratitude there, regardless of how it felt. Okay, so for today, I'm going to share a little bit of my perspective, just so you know the context of where I'm coming from, the work that I'm doing. We'll talk about Chiron, often called, the key based on the glyph. We'll talk a little bit about some basics about that. I'm not going to go into any depth on myth or anything about the planets or their cycles or anything like that, because I feel like y'all have learned that or learning it, have access to that information. I did the same thing in my article, but want to talk more about how can you apply how I think about these things and see if it works for you. Take what you like, leave the rest. We'll talk about Vesta, the flame, what keeps us going. I have chart examples for us to practice with together. And then if we have time to talk about some questions. Okay. So, and also I tend to talk fast when I get excited. So if you want me to slow down, then you just put something in the chat and I'll take a breath. All right. So the work that I do, so I've been a career coach in private practice it'll be 16 years this summer. It's really heart-centered work in relationship to what Faye is saying. It's work where I was a career coach first. I was studying astrology just on my own, unrelated, and brought in astrology after I started my practice. I use astrology primarily as an assessment. Not all the clients that I work with want to talk astrology, and so we don't, but you can probably imagine that it's going on in the back of my mind. The clients that I work with do all sorts of things. I want to make sure that work works for them. So I work with people who may come to me and say, hey, the thing I want to do with my life is through hike long trails like the Appalachian Trail. Can you help me make work for me? Or I'm working with people who are deeply embedded in corporate life and, are looking for promotion and growth in that way. It doesn't matter to me, whatever it is that they want to do. There's no specific niche that I have. I don't work any specific industries. It's mostly people who care about work, and that if they weren't in this stuck place, if they were able to figure it out themselves, they would be on their way doing it already. So we can all imagine why astrology would be really helpful for helping people get unstuck. All right, concerns they're bringing, anything and everything. I'm talking to people about career development concerns. They're having conflict at work, or difficult conversations, or preparing for an annual review. There's people who are job searching right now. So you can imagine when we think about a Chiron dynamic in terms of a pain dynamic or a wound dynamic, a hurt sensitive spot, there's a lot going on with that. And then if we talk about Vesta, which is the flame, what keeps us going, what helps with our resilience, and staying with what's real and what's happening in our lives, that those 2 points have become really surprisingly and interestingly relevant in having conversations with clients about what's going on. People come to me like they would come to any of us as astrologers, or even any kind of helping profession if they have some pain, right? There's only a few people that have come to me and said, I'm having such a great time in my work life, I want to like plan the next 5 years, right? So most of the time we're dealing with some kind of sore spot, or a place where they just need some space to have a trusted space to talk about it, and ways to think about how they can connect to themselves and their own empowerment and move forward, which our system doesn't always, oops, sorry, sensitive mouse, doesn't always allow us to do. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna head on into Chiron and imagine if there's any questions in the Q&A. Celeste will let me know, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. All right, so when we think of Chiron, these things, I want to make sure that we're not thinking about them as being literal. They could be literal, like you could be a healer, but I'm not looking at it from that standpoint. I'm looking at it from a standpoint of what's the dynamic? What are people saying to me? What's the feeling? How are they experiencing their work life? What's getting in the way? So when we think about, we talk a lot of times about people speaking their charts. So when I listen for this, or even listen for it inside myself, right? It's like this Chiron dynamic when I know it's Chiron at work rather than some other difficult point, like a Saturnian point or a Plutonian experience, a transit. I think it's like, oh my gosh, I have to do it, but I can't do it. Like there's no way out. Like I'm turning into a wall every time I try and figure this thing out. It might be something that I do really well for others. Doctor, heal thyself, right? There's lots of examples in our US culture, and most of what I'm talking about is US centric because of where I practice. And then, we have a particular relationship to work and identity and survival. But so I think about these kinds of things take on a different level of pain in that context. So there's something I do well for others. The amount of nurses that I work with that are having a difficult time taking care of themselves when they're taking care of other people. So we have a dynamic outside of astrology that points to this. People who are unable to identify their uniqueness, things that make them special, why they stand out. There's so much pressure in our work world to be able to do that, right? Speak to who we are, how we're different than others, and do it with confidence and connection. And Chiron can kind of create a sore spot in that. And then a lot of times there's this swinging in this pendulum. I'll talk about the pendulum in a minute. This between blaming oneself, like there's something wrong with me, I can't do it. Adam Gainsbourg talks about like, it's this wound that feels like I have this wound that's getting in the way of doing something that's essential to me being who I am. So, oh my gosh, there's something terribly wrong with me. Or, oh my gosh, these other people are doing these things wrong. They're doing these things to me. Right. And so we can be anywhere on this side of the coin or this side of a pendulum when we are listening for what Chiron is doing or people are saying in relationship to their work. I get nervous. Okay. So there's a lot of things when you're listening to someone tell you about what they're experiencing, right? And Faye was talking about questions, and Bronwyn was talking about like our connection to like being a human being in nature, like, wow, that we're so separated from that. But we can listen to that pain and understand the relationship to that pain, and that relationship to that wound is not something we need to meet at a surface level, right? Like, what would you do if there's a hurt animal in pain? I'm not going to go in there and yank them out from under the bed, right? And be like, do your resume. What's your problem? It's this idea of how do we work with Chiron in a way that within ourselves and with others when they're having this kind of work pain, to understand that it's probably in a bigger context. And if we can get people aware of how that's operating, then they might have that empowerment, that awareness for themselves, and be able to move past that and have a connection to how they can assess a work environment. So let's give an example. I did this in the article, which is Chiron and Taurus. We can probably just guess what some Chiron and Taurus pain might be like at work. Maybe some people aren't taking any breaks. I know people that don't take breaks all day. They're working online. They don't go to the restroom. They don't eat. They don't exercise. And so I'm not saying that every time that's a Chiron and Taurus thing, but when we start to think about where is this kind of entrenched thing that they can't seem to get out of, because then from a Taurus perspective, if I take a break, I'm not gonna earn, I'm not gonna survive, right? And so we end up in this kind of stuck pendulum wounded part of it. So we want to do is bring people out of it tenderly, gently, and start opening up perspective a bit about how Chiron is working and what we might be able to do differently. Because when we know what our Chiron wounds are, we can ask good questions in interviews about like, what the heck's going on here, right? Am I gonna, how do they feel about breaks? How do they this or that, right? So it informs a whole part of the process, not only from a connection to ourselves, but also our perspective about how are we going to empower ourselves and relate to what we're going to choose for work. So Aries, this is an example, which is like, Chiron spends quite a bit of time in Aries, so we're probably going to encounter a number of people, right? With Chiron in Aries, it's like, why do I have to always do it myself? Why is no one helping me? And then it'd be like, get out of here, you're messing it up, or I want to own the whole thing. But neither of these sides of this pendulum are going to be comfortable, or they're going to be really sent with a neutral kind of accepting tone. So usually that's when I know Chiron's at work, and where we can start to piece apart that, support it gently and acknowledge it, and then move people forward towards something that'll work better for them so they can define healthy work environments, understand their own gifts and talents, change patterns, evaluate the kind of work that works for them. So it's been really interesting understanding this kind of pain and how to interpret it. So what I want to do is just say, like, and we're going to, this is the part with the chart and giving it a chance. And so what I always do with folks is I like it to be interactive. We've talked a little bit about Chiron. You probably have done some studying of Chiron. You know what kinds of things we're talking about. We're not talking about who you want to be, who you should be, what title you should do for a living. We're talking about painful experiences, which might even be, for one client, like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I've never been able to figure it out. But if we're just doing this in the chat, what we're looking at is what we've got here is, I think that we could all probably just, there's no wrong answers. Brainstorm. What do you see? What would you think about Chiron and Cancer? What would you think might be going on with Chiron and Cancer? And I'll tell you who this person is in a minute. We won't take too long. Safety. Yes. Right. Awesome. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Wound about security. Okay. I'll need a translation. Oh, sorry, you guys. Touching my mouse, touching my, okay. Family conditioning. Family issues. Let's get one more. Protection. Okay, yeah. So, and then we've got this opposition to Saturn. What do you think? Trust, for sure. Trust. I am small and you are big, right? Yes. Oh, the pain of feeling that small. Children, creativity, right? Because fifth house, you're already branching out, right? Into the houses. Love it. Okay. So then what's this opposition to Saturn could be about, right? So this can get kind of literal when we talk about work in terms of like, ouch for work, right? In general. But we can also talk about Chiron and ouch for work for empowerment, ownership, self-authority, right? Restriction. Yeah. What's the constriction that's happening here in relationship to a Chiron and Cancer? Restriction and creativity, control issues, bringing out emotional responses. Like, I don't have this. And Celeste, you just spoke to like my whole entire career at Nike. You know what I mean? It's just like, I got my own pattern of what's happening with that. Issues with authority. You need to balance home and professional life, family, business with generations. Yes, right. You're all getting it, right? And so this is the stuff where there's so many possibilities about what this could be about, but we're listening to what the person's telling us. And the ability to conceive children or creative ideas. I want to stop here because when we talk work change is life change. All of what we're going through is going to impact each other, right? Regardless of where we sit to me, in my experience, in terms of where we sit in the globe, right? Because if you're going to have children or you have a creative thing that you don't necessarily need to fit in with your job, but your job impacts that, and vice versa. Like if you're totally feeling wonderful about your creative practice, there's a lightness in your being, there's an expansive, there's an underknowing. And if work isn't that big of a deal, right? You have a lot of energy you're generating to support work that isn't, if you're spending a lot of time there, it might be like, yeah, not a big deal. It's just a closed loop for work. I don't need it to generate all this energy because my creative practice does all this. So when we're looking at work in the chart, to me, the whole chart is a work chart. All houses are work houses. All points in the sky are work points in the sky, because we are whole human beings and work change is life change. So I love, Lee, that you brought up this piece about children, because we want to hear and listen to what our clients are saying about this. So when we think about this dynamic, and Adam Gainsbourg, he's got a great book that talks about looking at the sign being the trigger point, right? The pain point, the house being kind of like the context in which that gets triggered, the aspects, but but most specifically, looking at the opposition for the medicine walk of how that can help us. So fun is not allowed. That's awesome. So yeah, so you can't have fun. You have to be working all the time. Yikes. So when we start to look at the medicine walk or what's available to us in an opposition, we can look at what might be healing. Well, if a Saturn's over there making that a little difficult, extra tenderness might be necessary for this person. More listening, more spaciousness in a way they may not have given themselves to have this spaciousness. So I think when we're engaging with Chiron and looking at it in the chart, it's heavy, heavy, heavy for me on a career coaching standpoint of, are we asking questions like Faye's talking about? Are we staying connected to ourselves in this process and not letting our own Chiron get in the way? And then, what is it that this context really means for the person that's involved? Saturn teaches you to have fun. Wouldn't that be great? But this is what I mean about like branching out perspective when we look at this. We're not talking about Chiron as like, well, this is my wound and this is the healer and this is how it's going to be forever. And this is da-da-da-da. We're looking at like what's possible with Chiron when we release from whatever that stuck part is into this connection with the relationship to it. What can get bigger here? So if we look at that and say like, and then teach others to have fun. Yes, because what feels purpose, right? When we talk about purpose, we think about purpose in our lives. So there's lots of places to look for purpose. There's lots of places. But Chiron's a really essential place for purpose, I think, because we've gone through a lot. We've gained a lot of information. We've had a lot of painful experience. And what better to like apply it to something that can help someone else? Yeah, good combination, Jupiter, right? Chance to lead and mentor through vulnerability. Oh my gosh, the more reading you do about Chiron and think about vulnerability, and you read and read and read about it, it's like, it's this tender vulnerability. And if you like David White, he's not an astrologer, he's a poet, he's a writer, and he talks a lot about what's so important about vulnerability. So I use a lot of his quotes in talking about Chiron because he does a lot of work with writing about work also. So he's been super inspirational to me on this. So when we look at this dynamic, sometimes I'm going to close out on this because I don't want to be interest of time. But when we think about, I often think about how is Chiron interacting in a pinball way, right? So if you think about like maybe, yay, Celeste. So pinball way, like if Chiron was in a T-square, then I start to imagine what would these relationships be like without Chiron in it? Because we're looking at like what their relationship might be, and Chiron might be like, ouch. And then we just kind of get in this cycle of, oh, it makes all these other planets ouch, right? So we can start to look and understand where the Chiron dynamic might actively be playing, especially if it's complicated with a number of conjunctions or trines, as well as squares and oppositions. And I didn't use a lot of inconjuncts or sextiles in my interpretation, but I throw them in now and then because I know people do love them. But okay, all right, how am I doing pace wise? Am I like running it too fast?
I think you're doing great.
Okay, all right, then we're gonna move on to the next one, and again I'm gonna like try to do this. So all right, good pace, good. With this Chiron opposition, Saturn swinging between control and I am small and you so big. Okay, so I did promise you that I was going to tell you who this person was, and I didn't do it. This person was, she's in accounting. And she was really tired of doing transactional accounting. She wanted to do more strategic accounting. She had been in a lot of toxic work environments, especially in nonprofits. There's a lot of heart-centered work going on. But the thing she was talking about is she's like, I can't be in an environment where I take on everybody's stuff. She was ending up being a leader. She was promoted, and that became very problematic, right? She just retreat back into taking self-care, but then it caused a lot of problems. I could talk about her chart for a long time. As you can tell, there's probably, there's a lot of other dynamics going on here. But I just wanted to let you know that it's like, this isn't necessarily saying Chiron in Cancer in the 5th is, you're not gonna be like, oh, okay, well, vocationally, this person is gonna be an accountant. Right? But she didn't come to me because this person needs, some people want career change. This person came to me because she's trying to figure out how to get the next thing. She quit her job with no other job. She's taking a sabbatical. She's ready to figure out the next thing. How is she going to do that and not repeat the same painful mistake? So that's part of what this is. Okay. So Vesta. I mean, I've been working with Chiron in the chart for quite a long time, 10, 12, 15 years. And so I got a lot going on with Chiron in the chart and its relationship to work. When we talk about Vesta in the chart, it's only been about 5-ish years. And so things are still kind of gelling and coming together. But what a lot of times, especially through COVID, also through things that have been going on, I mean, since 2008, I mean, I'm a sociology major. And so my mind is always like, what are we, and of course, we layer the astrology on for the timing. But we're looking at like from 2008, what does work with dignity look like? How has that been degraded across when it is working for other people? What are we looking at in terms of our individual empowerment in a system? How do we, more gig work, right? There's all of these kinds of things that are asking us for continually increasing amount of resilience. And I don't mean resilience in like, suck it up and do it. I mean resilience in who are we with some of these words that to me are very Vesta related. What's my purpose? How am I sovereign, right? Am I self-determined? Do I have enough passion in my life? Am I focused on something? Am I willing to commit to something? What is worth committing to? Like, there's a lot of people at work, when I'm working with managers, they're like, people are like, yeah, it's transactional. I can't get them motivated. And I'm like, because they may not care and they're coming into a place where they're, more aligned with what's going on outside of work. This whole quiet quitting thing in terms of Vesta, I'm like, good on you. Like, to me, quiet quitting is basically just showing up and doing your normal job for the amount of time you're paid to do it. So when I talk with clients that are having, a lot of times in the career development space, but also in the career exploration space, when you think about what's going to keep them going, because career exploration, life change, work change, transition. If you read the book Transitions by William Bridges, you're going to get a lot of really interesting information. Those transitions aren't always going as fast as they want. And all of as astrologers, like, I know, because I get readings from people and I'm like, could that hurry up? Because I'm really uncomfortable. But in delivering it, right, you're like, the people are not in a space necessarily when they're in pain or in that frustration space to hear like, yeah, just hold on, through this Pluto transit. And, like, so we got to have other ways of talking with people about getting connected to the things that are going to get them through their tough situation, get them through tough transits. And so when you think about the flame, the thing that is inside of us, Tom Chaplin did a great article about this. He's also a career coach and an astrologer. And so it's been, that kind of piece has been really helpful in working with people. And my hope is that things change and societally things change as we move on. But I think that we got some rough going. And so if we can be in a place to support people and get them reconnected to themselves, I think we're in a really, as Faye was saying, a change position. And helping people. We got lots of ways of pulling levers in our life and our world. And I think this one is one that feels really, really positive. Okay. So I want to make sure that I talk about, so that's again, also, I'm not super literal, as you can imagine. Like, it's like, I'm not looking at Vesta to be like, this is exactly what you want to, this is the title of what you want to do for a living. But I think that purpose, resilience, honoring oneself, big time. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. Okay, I think we have enough to talk about a chart. Timing wise. Okay, so that's really glad. I'm so glad, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm on anything new here, but this idea of like, how can we integrate this more? And what does that mean for actually what we're here to do, which is less to me of the left brain, like rocking astrology, and the right brain or more complete piece is how do we use the understanding of astrology to help people who are having a hard time. Okie dokie. Here we are in the chart with Vesta. Have at it. What have you got? What are your thoughts? No wrong answers. Trusting intuition. Pisces. Yeah. Work in compassion. Yeah. Yeah. Open the compassion for others. Yeah. Daily work needs a spiritual meaning and purpose. Advice and Pisces in the 10th. Yes. Right. And so we look at those, that's what those houses, right? Victimhood and trying to change that. Right. So what is that? How do you reorient around that? We got a T-square with a couple important points. Vesta looks like the little flame. It's the one in the black one in the 6th house. That's at 7 degrees Pisces. Yeah, so this person has a T-square, but they're ascendant in the midheaven. So you can imagine we're having, it's kind of an interesting conversation here, right? Yeah, you bet, man. All right. So close to the sun, it could be, you know, their passion and sacrifice. Yep. Understands in the Chiron, the Vesta, the pain of the other. Yeah. Talk about it in the workspace. Yes. So we have a lot of different places where you can get an entry point, right? Even with these basic kinds of things. Saturn, Neptune conjunction, lifelong quest to unseen to thwart, right? So now we're starting to see, like, how do these things start to work together? How does Vesta or Chiron fit into the whole chart, right? Now, what does that mean for someone? So we're into this spot for this person who came to me and said, interesting and left by transit. There's, you know, Saturn was conjuncting her Vesta last year. So when we had this conversation, also some progressed stuff going on with the progressed sun. There's just there's a lot of stuff happening that we're not going to go into today because we have no time to do that. But if we start to think about what's going on, so this person was a dancer. She committed her life to dancing. And she went through the process, went to New York, couldn't, like, it was so much work. And at one point she had to surrender to that and say, like, I'm not going to do this for a living. And so she's done some, you know, interim jobs that she's not been really good at, but she's like, am I never supposed to have a purpose? Is work not supposed to have a purpose for me? Just really struggling, you know? And so then we're like, yeah, Vesta in this thing, be like, I kind of think it does. So we started talking about the other different kinds of things she's interested in. She's passionate about writing. She's passionate about prison reform. And so we talked a year ago. I'm meeting with her next week. I don't have the update in time to tell you how things are going. But like, it's like, there's pieces here of understanding, and our purpose, you know, we don't just get hit by a lightning bolt, and our purpose is the same throughout our whole life. We're human beings that express our purpose and who we are throughout time and throughout jobs, and it changes. And so helping guide people through the change and the understanding, right, of what this might mean for her, like, and it's not an easy switch. And there might be, you know, blocks or things along the way. So, but to stay in the space and to be able to use astrology as, you know, an affirmation or opening up different perspective, right? In all the senses, from the natal to the transits to the progressions, all of those kinds of things with these points have been really interesting. I haven't done any Vesta return stuff. It's probably, for my taste, it's a little too quick, but play around, maybe see what you can find. Okay, anybody have any last thoughts on Vesta in this person's chart? Comments or things like that? Yeah, using music to work on, oh, interesting, right? Like not abandoning our creativity in this sense, right? Saturn just went over it. Yep, that's what was happening in our reading last year. Listen to their gut intuition so they don't overserve, right? And become in that compassionate heart, right? So we've got a lot of ways to bring it in. Sharing your slides and giving your email. Yeah, sure, that's no problem. Yeah, happy to do it. People can contact me. Yeah. Okay, so I want to relate to this one, right? Is it nice to find somebody that you can relate to? You know, we're not alone in our pain by any means, but our society really keeps us isolated, and all of our left brain stuff about this is how it is, or this is how it should be, or this is how you interpret it, right? Or this is this, that, and the other. It's like, it's all separation, right? And so what we can do with these points in the sky is we can connect and be human with each other and relate and understand and support. He did. Johnny Cash, yes, Karen performed in prison. Yep. Yes, he did. It's a fantastic album and a really interesting context. All right, Nose and Sun of 6 in Aquarius. Yes, so that would all, you know, we're just trying, you're already like putting together this kind of full experience. So I just want to say a couple things about On my site, there's a free Chiron worksheet. You can use that for yourself. You can, use it for your clients however you want. That's fine. But it takes you through relating to your own Chiron and what does that look like at work, and then thinking about that. I have a Chiron online course that takes things into more depth by sign, talks about the dynamic that has happened, goes more into detail about that pendulum and the coin situation. On my site, there's free audio and video about a bunch of things, Chiron and Aries, and the Great Resignation, like all that stuff. It's all out there. And then I do consultations with folks. So I'd be happy to talk you through that for yourself. Vesta course in the future. I have done a Vesta course. I've done a Vesta talk. I can't remember if I did it for Las Vegas Stargazers. I've done it for a few NCGRs. I think LA chose Chiron, and then recently. So I've done Vesta a few times in the last 6 months. Yeah, I'd be happy to do a full Vesta course. Yeah. Anybody that wants one, I'm happy to do it. Yeah, and you're getting a sense of me, so it'd be pretty interactive in what we're doing. Okay, I don't know if we have any questions or have even had time.
There's a question, is Vesta also about defending your home?
Defending your home. Ooh, I've never thought about it like that. No one's ever mentioned it. I wonder, right? We can think about it like where it sits in the chart. That fire, yeah. So it's interesting. Like, yes, in terms of like the myth and everything, in terms of a sense of defense, but there was also a sense of this flame needed to be kept alive for a sense of community and keeping everything alive and going. So yeah, I think that, I would be really interesting to spend that some more in terms of defending, but tending is a great word. Thanks, Maria. To make sure that it keeps going, because if anything puts that fire out or starts to dampen it, which work can do a lot of times, then, it's hard, right? To just do the daily things of life, right? And participate. And sometimes with the light going out is part of a dark night of the soul and a passage, but with Saturn going over, possibly. Yeah, fire of the spirit, right? So we can talk about our bodily home, our sense of like our spiritual home. We can sense of like, if it's in somebody's fourth house, well, what's going on with the home? There's lots of ideas. Keep our spark going. Our body's our first home. Yeah, I need to remember our wellness. Yeah. It's just, I just find it really helpful, useful. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Wonderful. Thank
That's
you
what I
so
got.
much. Great. And can you give your email address if anyone wants
sure.
to? If anyone wants to email you, as well as for apologies, OPA does not send out slides. So Bronwyn, can you put your email address in the chat in case anyone wants to contact you directly for the slides, as well as Faye, if you could as well.
Yes, and then I'm wondering if there are questions specifically for Bronwyn, since we really didn't get to her questions, but this is a time for questions for everybody.
Yeah, so there's a question, two questions here for Bronwyn. So if you started a business, say when Jupiter was in the 7th house, would you have the first quarter when it's in the 10th house?
Right, the second quarter would begin at the 10th house.
Okay.
And that was the case for me because I'm coming up on year 8 now and in the first house here. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned to look for Gemini in your chart for current Jupiter year. Is this which house is ruled by Gemini? Would it also relate to where Mercury is?
No, just very simply, like which house is Jupiter transiting for you right now? That would be and I use whole sign for this technique. So what's your Gemini house?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're receiving a transit from Jupiter all year this year.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. Any other, and thank you, Aubrie, for your wonderful presentation. That was really interesting. I love how you brought in Vesta as well as Chiron. Are there any more questions? So, here, let me put. Okay, I'm going to put Bronwyn's email for everyone here, and you can email her directly for the slides. Nicola, yeah, email directly and put Aubree's here too. Any other questions? Wonderful. I don't see any other questions in that. Well, lots of wonderful, wonderful comments. People really enjoyed all of the presentations. Yeah.
It was amazing how different everybody was in their approach and kind of off the beaten path a little bit in terms of like the classic things you think about. So I really appreciate all of the speakers today for coming up with like newer, esoteric, interesting slants to add information about vocation and really soul purpose. I mean, we're talking about branding. To me, is like, how can your essence shine through the work you're doing and what your website says about you?
Yes, and please make sure to read all the articles in the next Evolving Astrologer magazine, and the next Transit Talk, which is available for OPA members only, is on July 7th. It's always the first Sunday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So I hope to see you there.
Mm-hmm.
Any other closing words anyone wants to share before we move, before we complete?
Oh, just thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom. It was wonderful. Great.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. And don't forget to start implementing these things right away.
Mm-hmm.
Bye now.
Okay, bye-bye, thanks.
Bye.